They say the NFL is a meritocracy, but if that's true, explain this. Brian Flores just watched 10 head coaching jobs disappear, one by one, and not a single phone call turned into an offer. Not after elite defenses. Not after playoff runs. Not after proving he can win. So the real question isn't whether Brian Flores is good enough. The real question is why the league keeps finding reasons to look the other way. If you care about how the NFL really works behind closed doors, if you've ever wondered whether speaking up costs more than losing games, stay right here, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this hiring cycle may have sent the loudest message yet to every coach watching. The start of the 2026 NFL season. 10 teams needed a head coach. 10 opportunities to reset a franchise. 10 chances to hire one of the most respected defensive minds in football. And when the music stopped, Brian Flores wasn't standing in any of those buildings. Again, this isn't a rookie coach trying to break in. This isn't a coordinator with potential but no proof. This is a man who shut down Sean McVay on the biggest stage the sport has ever seen. This is a man who went 24-25 as a first-time head coach with a Dolphins roster that was never supposed to compete. This is a coach players still vouch for, assistants still learn from, and offenses still fear. And yet, he's out. NFL insider Ian O'Connor didn't mince words. He said Brian Flores was the coach who got screwed this cycle. One of the best defensive coordinators he's seen in over 50 years of watching football. A coach who won nearly half his games in his first head coaching job. And then O'Connor said the quiet part out loud. You have to believe the lawsuit was held against him. That lawsuit is the shadow hanging over every Brian Flores interview, every rumor, every leaked shortlist. On February 1, 2022, Flores filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL, the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos, and the Miami Dolphins, alleging racial discrimination in hiring practices. It wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was a direct challenge to the league's power structure. For a league that prides itself on control, optics, and image management, this wasn't just uncomfortable. It was threatening. From that moment on, Brian Flores stopped being just a coach. He became a risk. Not because of scheme. Not because of leadership. But because he refused to play the game quietly. Fast forward to March 1, 2023. A federal judge approved the league's motion to compel arbitration in the case, with certain exceptions that allowed Flores' claims against the Giants, Texans, and Broncos to move forward. The case didn't disappear. It just went underground into a process the NFL controls far more tightly. And since then, every hiring cycle has told the same story. Flores interviews. Flores impresses. Flores doesn't get the job. Teams publicly praise his intelligence. Privately, they hesitate. They talk about fit. They talk about alignment. They talk about direction. Words that sound harmless until you hear them used over and over to explain why one coach keeps getting passed over while others leapfrog him. Look at the resumes that beat him out. Look at the opportunities given to coaches with worse records, less experience, and fewer accomplishments. And then ask yourself honestly whether this is really about football. Brian Flores is doing everything the NFL claims it wants. He rebuilt Minnesota's defense into a unit quarterbacks hate facing. He adapts. He evolves. He doesn't coast on reputation. He shows up prepared, demanding, and unapologetically intense. And that intensity? That's another part of the story people don't like to say out loud. Flores isn't the smiling, press conference-friendly figure some owners prefer. He challenges players. He challenges front offices. He demands accountability. In Miami, he pushed back against losing culture. He pushed back against half measures. And for a franchise that had grown comfortable with excuses, that didn't go over well. But here's the thing. The same traits that get praised in other coaches get reframed as problems when it comes to Flores. Passion becomes abrasiveness. Standards become inflexibility. Conviction becomes conflict. That double standard doesn't happen by accident. And this hiring cycle exposed it more clearly than ever. 10 teams. Different owners. Different markets. Different needs. But the same result. Brian Flores left out. If you're an assistant coach watching this unfold, what lesson are you supposed to take from it? Win quietly. Lose politely. And whatever you do, don't challenge the system. Because once you do, the system doesn't forget. The NFL will never say Brian Flores is being punished. It will never acknowledge retaliation. It doesn't have to. All it has to do is let time pass and let opportunities quietly dry up. That's why O'Connor's comment resonated. because people inside the league see it. They just rarely say it. And the silence from ownership groups speaks louder than any press release ever could. Here's the irony. The league keeps talking about diversity initiatives, keeps pointing to programs designed to create opportunity, keeps highlighting progress. And yet, when someone actually tests whether those words mean anything, the cost appears enormous. Brian Flores didn't just file a lawsuit. He forced the NFL to look at itself. And institutions hate mirrors they don't control. So now we're left with an uncomfortable reality. One of the best defensive minds in football, a proven leader, a coach with unfinished business, is sidelined not because of performance, but because of principle. And the message that sends? That's bigger than Brian Flores. Was this hiring cycle about football decisions, or was it about sending a warning? That's the question every fan, every coach, and every future whistleblower should be asking. So I want to hear from you. Do you believe Brian Flores is being blackballed for challenging the league? Or do you think teams genuinely see something they don't like? And if speaking up costs this much, what does that say about the NFL's promise of fairness? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This conversation matters more than ever. And here's the part that makes this situation even harder to ignore. The NFL loves patterns. Owners talk. General managers share notes. Hiring cycles are not isolated events, they're ecosystems. When one owner gets cold feet about a candidate, that hesitation spreads quietly, subtly, without a single email ever spelling out the real reason. Brian Flores walks into interviews knowing the football questions won't be the hard part. He can explain coverages, culture, staff building, quarterback development. He's done it before. What he can't explain away is the unspoken concerns sitting across the table. Not about wins or losses, but about control. Because from an ownership perspective, Flores represents something uncomfortable. He represents a coach who won't just take marching orders. He represents someone who might push back publicly if he believes something is wrong. And in a league built on tight power hierarchies, that matters more than fans realize. That's why this cycle stings differently. This wasn't a year with 2 or 3 openings. This was a wide-open market. Defensive-minded coaches got jobs. First-time head coaches got jobs. Retreads got jobs. And Flores still didn't. Ask yourself this. If Brian Flores had never filed that lawsuit, would he really be watching another season from the sidelines? Or would at least one of those 10 teams have convinced itself that winning cures everything? Because history tells us it does. The NFL has forgiven far worse when victories follow. The difference here is that Flores challenged the league itself, not just a locker room or a front office. And that's the part nobody wants to put on the record. The league will keep pointing to process. Interviews granted. Rules followed. Boxes checked. But fairness isn't just about access. It's about outcomes. And when the same outcome repeats over and over, it stops looking like coincidence. For Flores, the road forward is murky. Defensive coordinators can only dominate for so long before frustration sets in. Windows close. Momentum fades. And the longer this goes on, the easier it becomes for teams to sell themselves on newer names instead of proven ones. That's how exclusion works best. Slowly, quietly, plausibly. And yet, the story isn't finished. Because every season that Flores defenses continue to suffocate offenses, every time a quarterback struggles against his schemes, the question grows louder. How long can the league justify this gap between performance and opportunity? At some point, football reality collides with political reality. And when it does, the NFL won't be able to spin its way out of it forever. Until then, Brian Flores remains one of the most qualified head coaches not holding the title. And that should bother anyone who believes the NFL is truly about merit. So once again, I'll put it to you. If this can happen to Brian Flores, who's next? And what kind of message does this send to the next generation of coaches watching from the sidelines, deciding whether telling the truth is worth the cost? Let me know what you think.